Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 25 of the Stevie Richards Show. My name is Stevie Richards, trying to find some clever way. We did episode 21. The show was old enough to finally drink, at least here in America. It's 5 years old. Episode 5, you could drink in England. But here in America, 21. Now, episode 25, now we can rent cars from Hertz National, all the rental car companies. Yes, although the mystery, still after decades, Danny Doring and myself and James as well, who I'm going to pass it on to in a second, still trying to figure out how Balls Mahoney rented a car with no driver's license. These are the mysteries of wrestling that we'll talk about. James, how are you?
More baffled than I was, right? So how did he do? Was he just that convincing or just that annoying?
You know, it's one of those things like we didn't go in to see, we witnessed it 2 times together. Because we kept saying we were renting from the same car company. And we go, Balls, do you need a ride? He's like, no, I got my own car. And he was dressed with what he wore in the ring, which made it even more of a mystery. He walked in, Danny Doring and I are standing outside waiting for our rental. And we're like, there's no way he's going to walk out with keys. There's no way he's walking out with keys. Got him. Like, what? Hopped in a car, forgot his bags one time, had to come back to the parking lot. I don't know where he was in such a rush to get to. Had to come back and get his bags. He didn't need them. He was wearing his gear anyway. So I was like, what do you need the bags for?
Do you think that it's like Iron Sheik, who, I mean, I don't understand the concept of dry counties, or they won't sell you alcohol on a Sunday. But Iron Sheik would always come away with beer on a Sunday from everywhere he went just because he would annoy them so much or convince them in some other way that he'd just always get his way.
We have that in Florida. Sunday, I think up to 12:30. When I used to go to Wildwood, New Jersey, down the shore, Sundays, I think it's called a blue wall or something like that, where they still have very much an old, I think Quaker or Amish type of, I don't know where it originated. You're looking it up already, but it's Sundays, sometimes all of Sunday. And in some places like here in Florida, I think you got to wait till 12:30 p.m. I never had a problem with that anyway. So it was a rule or a law that never bothered me. Now, if you said gyms were closed on Sunday, which a lot of times when we travel, James, especially in the Bible Belt, gyms would not open until after church was over, like 1 p.m. And you know my schedule. That would drive me a bit nuts.
Man, so Jesus didn't want you yoked for the show that night.
I'm actually, speaking of which, great segue. I'm growing out the Jesus beard for Christmas.
Oh, yeah?
It won't get spine infection bushy, but it's going to get out there where no Grecian either. None of that punk stuff. Not going to darken it.
Oh, right. Has he got the sort of just for
He's
men
got the
beard
just
kind
for
of thing
men
going
going on. Yeah, that's okay. He's got the money.
That's fine. When the first photo of you came out with the spine infection, the first thing I did think was, man, he's got a really good beard going on there. How many weeks' growth was that?
It felt like 15 years when I was laying in bed. That was a good probably 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, stress could have promoted more beard growth of that. I mean, I wouldn't want to go. I happily take a second-rate beard without the pain rather than a first-rate beard with the pain. But thank you for the compliment. I've always been slightly self-conscious about that, but now I can go to like one of those beer companies. Maybe that's the sponsor. The first sponsor could be, this is what I used. It cured my spine infection too.
Yes, and gave you wonderful buoyancy in the facial age. We were trying to get a mustache wax company for Dutch. It's Dutch. He's got one of the best mustaches in the world.
They didn't?
And we couldn't find one.
Oh, wait a minute.
And it would have been perfect. Or like Manscaped or something. I can't grow a beard to save my life. So I just go as clean shaven as possible. As Dutch, as hey, if you want no beard, me. If you want a wonderful sculpted facial hair, such as the Dutchman, then you can use this wax or whatever. I thought that would have been perfect. I'm the worst person in the world at getting sponsorships, which is why we've never had a sponsor on this show yet.
Yeah.
No, but you never know.
We're going to work on it. There's something that my buddy Ben has. It's called Can You Handlebar or Handlebar Mustache. There is a company out there that deals with beards and mustaches especially. So you may want to look into that and see if you can get a sponsorship. Affiliates are the strength of my fitness channel. So maybe that's another thing. Just try to collaborate with them and have like, whatever website /Stevie or more importantly /James, that'll convert a lot of sales. You're the draw.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of making side money, aside from through YouTube, we've got some stuff to flog you. One of them is, and because Stevie's always kind enough to do it for me, I'll do it for myself this time. I've got two books, one on The Rock, one on Owen Hart, two fine biographies, What I Wrote. Well regarded and very highly rated as well. They're exclusive to Amazon. The links are in the description. Stevie has a couple of things he would like to share with you as well. One of them is the YouTube fitness channel. For God's sake, go over there. And you do very well from the affiliate sales from that as well, I understand. I know what's the latest on the
Well, the
fitness channel?
latest is actually my favorite one, and it has nothing to do with any affiliate conversions or anything like that. This company sent one of those under-desk elliptical trainers. It has a manual mode. It also has assist modes, which is really great for the situation. My father-in-law is suffering from some neurological issues, loss of feeling in the legs, loss of strength. I know something about that too from the spine infection, but they sent this so we can take it to him, and he actually provided the review when we took it to him. So it was probably the most special review out there. And that's more of what I want to lean into, James. In 2025, I'm trying to figure out a story to tell with each thing, not just here's the thing, I like it, could you buy it? Or I don't like it, don't buy it. I'm trying to figure out a way to incorporate a story. And that's kind of a good segue for the show title that we have, the, tentative show title about what bugs me about wrestling today. And that's the thing I'm trying to promote on the fitness channel that I haven't done is tell more stories, involve people in the journey with health, fitness, and wellness. It's a tricky thing, but it's a fun thing to try to figure out. And that's why I don't understand as we start the episode why wrestling and wrestlers don't. That's the fun part about pro wrestling. It's the stories, the angles, the imagination. You can create any universe you want to, and yet nobody seems to do it anymore. That wasn't one of the top 5 or 6, but now it's 7 as I talk.
Yeah. We're going to reference this more in a short while, but we just recorded something for Patreon, the Stevie Richards Show Patreon. All the money goes to Stevie, not to me, so you're supporting him for goodness sake, so don't feel bad about that. 20 minutes, we went through basically a 30-second opening spot between Will Ospreay and Ricochet that they've done time and again, most recently on the AEW Dynamite 5th anniversary show that you wanted to discuss, and we had a good conversation about that. That is exclusive to the Stevie Richards Patreon, as well as the pre-show and post-show stuff that we do every week, which is basically a podcast in itself, pretty much. Sometimes wrestling, sometimes just whatever's bothering us that day, I guess, as well as more exclusive stuff as well. The reason why we did the Will Ospreay Ricochet spot is because it's like a 30, 40-second clip, and it's kind of hard to do for YouTube without getting content ID'd, which is why we did it for the Patreon. But any more information for the Patreon to encourage people to watch and subscribe?
Thank you very much. And that's something that I prefaced it and said at the end that personally, I like both of these guys, and as performers, they are incredible. They're incredibly athletic. They can do so much. If they just sprinkled in a little bit of psychology, I wish they would sprinkle in a lot, but just a little bit. My God, the people could be paying money to see both of them individually or against each other. And that was very constructive criticism. When I say I hate the spot or I don't like the spot, it does not mean that I don't like or appreciate or not fans of the actual talent. So we can separate that.
On that basis, we're going to be talking about what bugs Stevie Richards about wrestling today. And there's quite a lot of things. We couldn't get to everything. This also is going to be spawning a sort of future occasional segment called Stop That Now, which is something basic the wrestlers are doing today that they either shouldn't be doing or something that they maybe should be doing and don't. So that's going to be
Chris can put up a big stop sign and a little sound effect when we start the thing.
Or Raven hitting someone over the head with a stop sign like in WCW.
Probably me.
He's over.
He wants to hit me with a stop sign right now, I'm sure.
I'm sure he does, but tough.
Dodge. Dodging. Look at that. I'm doing the Rocky Four with the string. Ducking and parrying.
Keep that left up, Rocky.
Oh, sorry.
The first thing is I've just realised in the format that you want to talk about was Mike Bell, Perry Saturn comments from last week, and you said you were going to send me over some stuff. I didn't get any of it, or I didn't download it.
You did not download it. I sent it via WeTransfer. So,
was it a JPEG you sent me?
There's a bunch of them. There were a bunch of files that were screenshots, so I can go through them right now. And I also sent them to Chris so he can bring them up on the screen. So
Super.
this has been something first and foremost, not really anything I'm going to reply to. Thank you very much for everybody on patreon.com/Stevie Richards for looking at this. We look at these comments and we try to look at the YouTube ones as well. JC says, I maybe recommend the Brian Gamble match. This is something we talked about a couple times and it's been suggested in the YouTube comments. I saw a video on it by a guy called V Infuso on it years ago. Sound like a Mike Blackwell situation. So what we're talking about is when we talked about the, was that part of what went wrong, or was that our first FAFO segment with the skyscrapers versus Avalanche without the E because they saved the E for Death Row? And of course, Mike Blackwell, which will go down in infamy for this. So if you haven't seen that clip, please check it out. It is incredibly baffling to me why Mike Blackwell kept getting up.
There is, well, you said maybe we should do this week, and I said, well, I've not watched it, and it sounds like this is the kind of thing that we may have to do for Patreon just because it's a longer form thing. But either way, we'll sort of figure it out together, and we will be doing the Perry Saturn Brian Gamble match, which also happened 5-6 months after the Mike Bell match. So it wasn't a good year for Perry regarding enhancement talent, I guess.
And this was the mopping era. So this is after they put the mop on him, and it happened to an extent again. All right, the next comment here, talking about the Perry, people have very great insight, and the people who are doing research, I'm not sure of the accuracy of this. I don't have the name up here, but I screenshotted the comments, so thank you. To be honest, I had a hard time figuring out why Perry lost it with Mike. The whole thing seems like a storm in a teacup that got made out to be bigger than it was because of how Perry was punished in the aftermath. That's a great point. You had that point too. That being said, I do remember how shocked I was the first time I saw Mike land on his head, and I do think I've become desensitized having seen it a few times since then. Excellent point as well. So with that in mind, I'm guessing that several factors came together at once. Number one, initial reaction to Mike landing on his head. Number two, a fear of being sued. Number three, previous instances of Perry losing his temper. I've been there for that. And four, creative having nothing to do for him or having nothing for him. All excellent points. I don't know if you have any comments about that. So we have Lewis Barrett. I'll be honest with you, as I mentioned before, Mike Bell came from Paul Roma's school. I didn't know that. Before Mike Bell came from Paul Roma's school, I was trained by Adrian Street. And as Adrian discussed before, there were certain schools where you are expecting a certain level of quality going into the match. I wonder if because Mike Bell was trained by Paul Roma, Perry was expecting a particular standard. And when he didn't deliver, why he went off on him, it's almost like you're better than that combined with anger. Now, I would say there's an accuracy if I'm wrestling somebody and somebody who comes up to me and says, hey, that person was trained by so-and-so, or they talk about, so like say Wildcat Sports, Luke Hawks trained somebody, or Devon trained somebody, or even Cody Rhodes trained somebody. I'm going to give that performer a lot more latitude without putting eyes on an actual match they wrestle, because I'm like, okay, well, if Cody or whoever trained them and they came out and this guy's been working for a little bit and I don't hear any complaints or warnings, okay, give me a hip toss, arm drag. I'm going to give you a little bit of a shine on me. That could be very true that Perry and Mike were familiar, but Perry thought, well, Mike has been here a while and done enhancement matches, and everybody seems to want to work with him, and there's no complaints. Let me give him a little bit of something. Plus, he's a local guy. He's in my area. It could be anything. They could have ran across each other somewhere during the ECW days on the Indies. I don't know about that. So this is interesting from Mark Cole, and this could be another reaction segment. He goes, I don't know if it completely fits, but the Buzz Sawyer-Sullivan tag match on TBS from the early 1990s that precedes the infamous "It's Not the Dog's Fault" promo is some odd stuff. And then they gave us a link for that. Do you know about that match?
No, I don't know about this match at all. I don't know the promo either.
We'll have to put that, I'll put a pin in that. I just want to read those comments because there was a lot of comments on Patreon about that Mike Bell and Perry Saturn. We did the full reaction, the full match reaction up there. So thank you to everybody there. And thank you to everybody for commenting on YouTube. We try to take a look at those, and we will be interacting with those more and more as time goes on.
Now, what bugs us about wrestling? Good, not us, Stevie, for goodness sake. Anyway.
Oh, come on, James. Go get heat with me together. Together. Oh, help me help you get heat. Do you remember that movie?
No.
Jerry Maguire, help me help you. But he didn't say get heat. That was my wrestling spin.
I was going to say, you picked a film I've actually seen, which is amazing. So, someone said to me the other day, he was like, man, have you got any series that you're going to watch? And he was saying, like, The Penguin with, is it Colin Farrell?
Yes.
And down there's something else as well. And I was just like, meh. I don't watch TV series. I don't watch films anymore. The last time I watched a film that wasn't a Disney film, just to have on in the background for the baby, was actually for me.
For the baby.
Yeah.
I've watched, a little fun fact, my wife has estimated, because I used to fall asleep to The Dark Knight each and every night since it came out on DVD back in DVD, kids. You know what that is? It's one step past CDs, which you probably don't know what those are. She estimates I probably watched The Dark Knight, which I actually watched it on my iPad this morning while I did cardio, over 6,000 to 7,000 times. So, best movie ever made.
It's got a sequel. You know it's got a sequel, don't you?
I watched all three of them, but The Dark Knight is the most perfect movie. And then there's a part of me, too. This is a great segue. I'm getting to it. The reason why I love The Dark Knight, even Batman Begins. Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, what did they have at the end of each movie? A cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. Setting up the next episode, the next movie. Yeah, it's easy to set up for TV episodes. They were setting up for the next movie. And the thing that I loved about The Dark Knight is the good guy had to pretend to be the bad guy to save the good guy, Harvey Dent, who turned into the bad guy to protect the people of Gotham. He had to be the hero they needed, not the hero they wanted. Or it wasn't the hero that they needed, it was one they deserved. I'm sorry, see, I've watched so many times I got the quote wrong. But it ended with, wow, that's not a comic book superhero storybook ending. And it just set up for the next one. So I think number one, if we're going to talk about things that bug us, the number one thing would be in episodic TV where you're expected to have the fans come back with the who done it, what happened, all this stuff, the mystery, or is he going to be able to come back, the babyface, the hero, from going through a table or getting beat down as we leave the shot of the hero laid out and the heels over him. We don't get that anymore. We do get it 50-50 bookings. Somebody goes through the table, somebody gets beat, but it's literally the next week we know the hero is going to come back, lay them out, and the end of the show, Damian Priest, Cody, they're standing over the heel. So that's what bugs me. And I don't understand, and this is a little bit of a tangent, why are we hot-shotting this stuff when there's literally no competition? Or your crowds are completely different. Why would you hot-shot it?
Should we do this now then? Because I think it was such a good segue. I had this later on in the format, but should we jump ahead and get straight into this now?
Yes, I believe so.
Right, that's absolutely fine then. So yeah, this was a list of things that basically happen in wrestling, the more broader scope of stuff that bugs Stevie. We've got 5 points, but you said you had to limit it to 5. And as you say, no cliffhangers was the thing that bugs you the most.
Well, it's bugging me the most because we have episodic TV. You talked about The Penguin. I haven't seen it, but I can assume at the end of each episode, it's hooking you with something to watch the next episode. You know, even football does it. Football will have things, cliffhangers, like, for instance, this past Monday, the Cowboys, they blocked a punt, but the Cincinnati Bengals recovered it and won the game. So they found a new way to lose, and their fan base is really angry. But the whole week they're talking about that. So how are the Cowboys going to react this week? Is somebody going to get fired? Are they going to bench the quarterback? What are they going to do? I'm not saying anything. They may fire the coach. So now you have anticipation before the next game. What's going to happen with the Cowboys? Then when the game comes up, the announcers, I bet you the commentators are going to say, oh man, this happened last week. How are they going to recover? And then the Cowboys may come and ball out and blow out the opposing team. And you're like, wow, what a comeback by the Cowboys. Or something else happens, and now the continuing storyline of the Cowboys' downfall at the end of the season continues. For some reason, real sports can do better cliffhangers, better storylines, better angles, and dare I say it, have better characters today than the WWE or wrestling in general.
Did you hear the Dana White quote recently complaining about other sports, like probably NFL, I guess, for example, where they say, there's a little bit of action and then a bunch of people in the studio host an entire podcast and then the next play happens. And there's sort of a reason for it. I mean, it's sort of quite unique to American sports, I guess, because, there are a lot of timeouts and breaks and stuff like that for the most part. But I mean, there's sort of more of a reason for that is that you are setting the table for why the next thing matters constantly over and over and over again, which is why there's, pre-shows and post-shows and stuff like that. Wrestling's trying to do that as well now. I don't think it works for wrestling because I think wrestling itself is sort of like it's all encompassing within the show itself. All the storytelling is there and they make it very obvious for you throughout. But yeah, I mean, sports.
That's why I wanted 6 because that's my one of my things I hate more than anything.
Yeah,
is what football's doing, but wrestling's trying to do it, but very badly. Yeah. We'll get to that if we can have a bonus 6 one.
Oh yeah, Dutch says also. I think he said it in TNA or Puerto Rico, and I can't remember what the second one was, but it was something like we should be trying to book for 2 people, cliffhanger, and something like suspense or something like that. I can't remember what the word was.
His cousin, anticipation.
Yeah. Anticipation. There's an audience of 3.
There you go.
Aha.
Ha.
I've got you first.
Thank you.
So
people miss that. We got to get the quote in. I think 4 to 6 is the over/under. People want the over.
Oh, we should take our own bets on that then.
That's true. We got one.
Probably inside.
Or is it 2? We did at the same time. So is it 2?
That's 2. Yeah, I can give you 2.
Okay, let's do it.
So, yeah, here's the thing. I think wrestling fans are treated generally over the years so badly as far as just cohesive storylines goes that when WWE, the last couple of years at least, has been doing basic storytelling in a soap opera-like setting where they don't just give you everything on every episode, they give you enough. Most recently, why was CM Punk and Paul Heyman working together once again, and what's the favor that Paul Heyman now owes CM Punk, etc. These constant little mini mysteries that go to the next episode and the next episode and the big pay-per-view. It's all really basic storytelling that a few years earlier it didn't have, and for the most part AEW doesn't have now. And when you give the wrestling fans basic storytelling, they're so grateful for it.
Yeah, it's almost like the simplest stuff is now the rarest and most extravagant thing you'll ever see because what's old is new again. Storytelling is new. Here's the thing with WWE that they do wrong. They only take care. It's so much of a 2 or 3 or 4 tier society within the roster. They will take great care. And my theory is the talent at that level can question, tweak, and they can call audibles or they can go amongst themselves to see what can we do to make this good? It feels like more collaborative, where if you're mid-card or lower, or even the girls, I think the girls suffer from it most, where they are so handcuffed and they're treated like little puppets. You have to do this, and that'll lead to part 2, or the number 2 thing that bothers me. But it feels very much like there's not a consistent care for the characters, the storylines, the angles, the finishes, nor what's going to happen at the end of the show and how are we setting the table from SmackDown to Raw or Raw to SmackDown or both shows to a pay-per-view. For instance, there was that episode I talked about a few episodes ago. They literally threw everything at the fans, the audience, and the people in the crowd on the SmackDown before a pay-per-view the very next day. Why do we need to watch it? That they are not immune from just becoming an indie with TV at times, and I don't understand it. Then they go, right now, Survivor Series is over. So what are we doing? Okay, we're going to go and push Saturday night's main event. Then after that, Every man and woman for himself. Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble to WrestleMania. The WrestleMania. Here comes The Rock back to try to spike it or do something like that. It's just a playbook that keeps recycling itself, and it feels very much phoned in. That's just my thought. If you can do it with one angle, why can't you do it with all of them? That's my question.
Number two, then. Now, this sort of relates to what we were talking about prior to recording this show. We watched, as I said at the beginning of the show, Ricochet and Will Ospreay. Just the beginning 40 seconds, the overly rehearsed sort of like modern version of International, essentially, or their sort of spin on it. And your point here is too choreographed.
No struggle. The lockup was great. If you watch that Ricochet and Will Ospreay match, my favorite part of the entire spot was the lockup. Good lockup, solid lockup, struggle, push against the ropes, try to jockey for position. That's the essence. If there's one word to describe any pro wrestling match, at least ones that are good and have foundational psychology, is struggle. The struggle. Meaning it doesn't always have to be clean. It doesn't have to look cooperative. The trick is to cooperate without looking like you're cooperating. That's not easy. So I'm not saying, but if you're paid to go to NXT or paid to go to Performance Center, paid to learn how to wrestle, or even you just go to the Performance Center, you go to NXT, you're labeled as the next big thing or great star or whatever, which Brock did fulfill the next big thing. I'm talking about everybody there in this era. Then you get to the main roster. And the weird thing is, I think they instill confidence in the talent with NXT, which is a double-edged sword. I would love for somebody to give me the confidence to go out there and know I can perform and I can kill it, crush it, and really have a match that people can be proud of and enjoy. But it gets to a point too when you're getting ready to go to the main roster. I'm hoping, but I feel like they're not doing it. I'm hoping they're coaching them very hard and splitting hairs and just really looking at everything they're doing wrong. I think they just say, you're ready. They go up there and they obviously don't look ready because NXT is so choreographed, but doesn't train the wrestlers. I agented a match with Otis and this other guy and got a ton of heat because they were the first match. I gave them a little blueprint and I said, go out there and have fun. And I did not call the spots to them through the referee earpiece, and everybody got mad at me. And you know what they did? They had a solid match. They had fun out there, and they were relaxed because they weren't waiting for the referee every 5 seconds to tell them what to do. They had 6 things to do. They had the opening. They had a little bit of shine to open up with. They had a heat spot. They had a little bit of heat where I gave them a hope spot, so that's 3 right there. They had not even a double down because they were the first match. Went right into the comeback. That's 4. Then they had the finish. Then they had the person standing in the ring, not for too long, but getting the show. I said, you guys are the most important match because you're here to set the pace, warm the crowd up, and let them know they're in for a night of action that they can enjoy. And everybody had a variety type of thing. But I'll tell you what, for the rest of that show, guess what? Everybody had the same match, dare I say it. There were super kicks, DDTs, same apron spots, going to the outside. And Otis and that guy, in my estimation, had the best match of the night, which probably there had me heat too. But I was unwilling to compromise what I was taught to pass along to them and just stand there and have somebody who doesn't know more than me tell me how this is supposed to go. And I feel like that's what happens. Too choreographed means they're waiting, they're in a hold or standing there, and I can see the referee going up to one, going up to the other, going up to one, going up to the other. And it just feels so disconnected. It feels like each spot is a little match within itself because they're waiting for the next spot. So that's it. There's also other ones like, this is a little bit more of the minutia that you wanted, the nuance, right? Why is it every time someone charges the ring, I got to swing a clothesline at them? I can't just try to grab them, they break and start punching me. Or I try to get away, but they get me. It's always throw a clothesline in the aisleway, throw a clothesline after you let them go into the ring under the bottom rope or through the ropes, right? You're like standing there going, okay, okay, okay. And it's just stupid and choreographed. That's why people laugh at the business, because it doesn't look like a real fight. Even Dana White, the company he works for owns WWE. And how many times has Dana White just been like, that's silly shit. Not watching that. It's stupid.
I always love quoting Rip Rogers when he says "as seen on TV," and what he means by that is, it's like monkey see, monkey do. You see something on TV, and here's the real. As you drink out your Star Trek mug, here's what I figure is the issue: is that people see a move, they try to imitate it, but nobody anywhere is ever explaining the theory of why this move is. Not even the psychology of where the move is placed. But let's say between a lockup and a DDT or an Irish whip or whatever, they imitate where the arms go and where the body should be, but the theory or the mechanics of why a move works. And if they knew the mechanics of why a move might work in a real fight, then they would know how to apply it properly. Even if it was an Irish whip, which is, I know, in pro wrestling, fairly ridiculous.
Well, the Irish whip too. We talked about that Irish whip off camera, and I'm going to try to go to a wrestling school so we can evolve some of the content and actually show some of the stuff within the confines of a wrestling ring, so you get a visual representation of what I'm talking about. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when you're whipping somebody off the ropes. The person getting whipped off the ropes grabs your wrist first. It's the assisted Irish whip, I call it, and that's why. When people, at least with me, if somebody's against the ropes or a corner, you go chest to chest, shoulder to shoulder, you grab, it gives you more of a range to do the whip. But at the same time, you're blocking the view that you're grabbing each other's wrists for a tight Irish whip. That's all. It's supposed to be that way, but it's not supposed to be the victim of the Irish whip grabbing the guys first. You're supposed to resist the Irish whip. That's why I was always a big fan, too, of the guys for no particular reason. And this is how I knew somebody was very inexperienced or not as experienced as they said they were. I would never, hardly ever, early in a match, let anybody whip me off the ropes or into a corner without first beating me a little bit. In other words, I would hold on to the rope or the corner or hook it and let them hit me or kick me to loosen me up. Or, it's kind of like being in a headlock. You don't just shoot him off. You got to hit the forearm to the side or try to loosen the headlock. He's not going to just let go. But some guys would just go nuts. Like, what did you forget? Oh, move out of the corner. It's like, what? Because I'm holding on to it and like, no, it's just, I'm not giving it to you right away. It's a struggle, but it's too cooperative and there's no struggle and everybody's helping everybody out. And God forbid if somebody's not in the same spot. Have you seen the deer in the headlights? Deer in the headlights when someone's not, you're supposed to be in this corner and they run everybody over to the other corner. You got 4 corners to do it. It could be any corner you want, but it's so weird. That's where the Hot Wheels feet come in also with stuff like that.
Yeah, you've got to be on the hard camera, baby. Right, we're not going to go into the specific moves. That is actually going to be a sort of an ongoing series further on into the show's run, I'm absolutely sure. I just wanted to make mention of the as seen on TV, because I said this to you off camera. A lockup is, well, this arm goes here, that arm goes there, collar and elbow lockup. Okay, well, that's where the arms go, but there's a heck of a lot of difference between putting your arms there and calling it a lockup and then doing a proper, or at least proper looking lockup. There's a wide gulf of difference between it looking real and looking completely fake. And I think far too many wrestlers today don't even know the difference of that. But, as I say, for a future episode. Number 3.
I want to say something real quick about that.
I could tell that as well. I could tell. Chomping on that one.
Well, because this is where people are drilling to get their finishes right. People are drilling to get a move. They'll practice a move a million times, right? But I tell you right now, at 53, with over 30 years experience, locked up thousands upon thousands of times in matches. If I had to get back into the ring, I would be doing 100 lockups every day. Practice, practice, practice. I would be chain wrestling. I would be just trying to feel my range and how I move again, and just take even chain wrestling and doing a lockup and stuff. You got to condition your body just as much as you would for a bump. So just so I don't look like a fool or I'm rusty or I'm too old to do it, I would be drilling. I'd be teaching my wife a lockup or somebody who doesn't know, just so I can have a body to kind of get that there. Because what they used to do in wrestling school would be they would walk by you and just lock up, because it has to be a reflex. Because there might be somebody coming at you at a different pace and you're not ready and you need to lock up like that. And that happens a lot. Sandman was the guy who always unpredictably would lock up, or he just come at you like he was trying to, like Al Snow says, gentle Ben and the child actor, the bear just trying to, trying to maul the child actor. And I'm just like, you got to be prepared. And a lot of this stuff has to be second nature and a reflex, and requires feeling, instinct, and no thought. That's what the drills are for.
Number 3 is finishers not protected. This is something we've touched upon when we were talking about the NXT O-face, as you call it. That's a good face for the thumbnails as well. Keep doing that. Now, does this purely relate
Willy
to
Wonka shot there?
Man, a lot of kids died on his watch, let me tell you. Is this just purely people kicking out of established finishes, or is this people using previously established finishes as transitional moves now?
Well, you got to say both, because either way, the term is prostituting, we'll call exposing the finish. It used to be, and even then, I remember it wasn't every year. It became a WrestleMania tradition for this is when someone's going to kick out of your finish.
Do you know when it happened? Do you know when that started?
Was that Taker's tombstone?
Do you know, I was gonna say the year after, but saying that, I think you're right. 14. But the thing is, with Kane, he was always
no, it wasn't 40. No.
No, 14.
Sean, 14. Oh, but it was more prominent right around the 2 WrestleManias with Shawn, because Shawn kicked out, I think, at both WrestleManias, if not definitely one of them.
Yeah, I was thinking
that was the meme shot
15.
of Taker's eyes, remember, after he kicked out?
Yeah. As a thumbnail generator, that's gold for me as well, let me tell you. I was thinking WrestleMania 15 with The Rock and Steve Austin. But there's a marked difference between that and then subsequent WrestleManias, is that The Rock got the stunner and then he wasn't pinned for about, 15 seconds afterwards, and then he only just kicked out 2, so they had that space for an explanation. It's the main event, biggest show of the year. Plus, there was 15 seconds. And then, a few years later, the Rock Bottom and the, Stone Cold Stunners kicked out of both. And we are where we are now.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most prominent one where it kind of made sense, if you were ever going to do it, was WrestleMania 18 with Hogan and The Rock, where they exchanged finishes. But they were exchanging like Hogan gave him the rock bottom and Rocky kicked out of his finish that was stolen by Hogan. See, in that way, because that shows that Hogan can't do it as well as The Rock. And then Rock hit Hogan with 3 of them, I believe, to beat him. It's become a WrestleMania tradition, but now it's becoming a weekly tradition. And of course, they think they save it with the NXT face of being so shocked and surprised. But no, taking someone's finish too. Now, I know something about this. I'm sure people know. But what I did was, I obviously started stomping in the corner in ECW. That was something that was suggested. Maybe it was a rib, but at least it got the fans into it. And Shawn he was wrestling, but I think he was on the way out with Austin after the WrestleMania from Boston, WrestleMania 14, I believe. But I was doing it because of Shawn, but I realized, number one, I need to put my spin on it. So I called it a Stevie kick. Something as simple as that, differentiated a little bit from Shawn. And then my psychology was not always stomping in the corner, but hitting it out of nowhere for a finish. That was what made that finish at least special. And of course, people putting it over and taking it as a finish, the cooperation of the talent is the most important part for any finish to have validation.
I just wanted to say when I saw the WWE show in Manchester in October, I think, whenever it was. Anyway, I was going to say Andrade and Santos Escobar was the opener. It turns out we just got there late and didn't see Jey Uso versus Bron Breakker. But in the second match, there was a Canadian Destroyer that was kicked out of, and then O-Face
Who did
as well.
that?
That was the second match on the card. Escobar and Andrade, or vice
See,
versa. I can't remember.
what you just did there, you needed to think about it. So this incredibly dangerous move, which was also kicked out, and you're like, I'm like, well, who did that? And you're like, you know what I mean? What happened? Hey, who slammed who at WrestleMania 3? Right away. Okay. Who beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6? Oh, Ultimo. You know what I mean? That's the memories and the moments that people want to create, but for some reason, these finishes, when you kick out of them so often, guess what? If everyone kicks out of your finish, guess what? It's not anymore.
A finisher.
Hmm.
Let's go to number 4 then. Exposing too many weaknesses.
This is definitely not on the talent, but the talent can protect themselves and know objectively what they do well and what they don't do well. I was going to say it was some stuff about annoying. We have this in the context of modern wrestling. I was going to talk about specific talents. One of the things that annoys me about myself is my lack of ability to take a really good face pump. Like Bubba Ray Dudley takes probably the best face pumps I've ever seen. But I've always been scared since I hurt my neck. Now, what I've done in a lot of ways is tried to either take DDT bumps where I spike myself, or if I'm going to take a face bump, just try my best, but it never, like when Jericho used to do that bulldog, I would spike myself down and then I had the hair so I could flip over and make it look like, wow, it wasn't a face bump. He planted them head first. I was able to mask my weakness, make it look like a strength, but not overexpose the fact that I'm not good at it. Because if I did that every week, there was bound to be more bad takes than good takes of that. So the thing that people do way too much, and this is where I believe that the lack of them being on the independents and learning what they can and cannot do hurts a lot of talents on the main roster in WWE and definitely AEW because they think they can do anything. The Nia Jax chair shots proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that you shouldn't pick up a chair, Nia, and ever swing it. Why you would swing it once and not right then on the fly go, no more chair shots. I'm going to splash. I'm going to leg drop. I'm going to do whatever I can. And dare I say, with Nia, wouldn't it be more impactful if she did the avalanche splash or the leg drop or the bonsai drops than a chair shot? She's not known for chair shots anyway. So right there, exposing a weakness and not accentuating a strength. And that's creative's fault. And I don't know where the damn agents and producers are, because why are you not like telling the talent, you suck at this, do this instead? It's so strange.
And number 5.
And I'll say this too. I'm sorry. I know I did it. I said a second thought. For everything I said during the Paul Heyman episode, I want everybody out there to still focus on a few other things as well. Paulie was the absolute best. The production crew, with Paul directing it, was the absolute best at hiding all of our weaknesses. And there was many across the board on the roster. But that's the reason why 20, 30 years later, people still talk about ECW. Because we didn't expose our weaknesses. And that's something we could be talking about these talents 20, 30 years from now, but I don't think we're going to.
Number 5, reinventing the wheel, and in brackets, you've written dangerously.
Well, this goes back to the Drew McIntyre Riddick Moss spot, where you took an Alabama slam, but you said, what if we just reverse it and we do a face bump, or in this case, a DDT bump? Also, a power bomb. Well, a power bomb's pretty devastating. What if I power bomb you into the corner of the apron? And then you come back the next week when it hurts for real. Have you ever, I've bumped into that. That's how I hurt my knee before One Night Stand. Sliding into the ring, but I caught my knee on the corner of the apron, the same corner that Kevin Owens is power bombing everybody into. That's what I mean. The girls do it too. What I seen an apron spot not too long ago. I think we talked about it where they're doing German suplexes on the apron. They're DDTing. They're sweeping the legs weird. There's all these different things, or they're trying to do dives that are, it's kind of like that spot we watched with the kid. Instead of doing a 450, I'm going to do a reverse 450, but I'm going to literally land on top of my neck the absolute scariest way I can land on it. That's reinventing the wheel. I dare everybody, now that YouTube exists, you don't have to buy VHS tapes like I did. Once again, I'm aging myself out with that. Watch Memphis Wrestling. See what they do. Like I said earlier, storytelling is old, but it's new again. Take everything from Memphis, and I guarantee if you're on an indie and recreate a Jerry Lawler Austin Idol, Jerry Lawler Randy Savage, the Moondogs versus the Road Warriors, or Road Warriors versus Lawler and this other guy. They're going to be like, where did this person come from? I haven't seen anything like this in my life. So that's reinventing the wheel. Also reinventing the wheel is, you know what? Yeah, the super kick is great. But what if I super kick you in the back of the head and you're not looking? Well, of course I'm going to have to lay it in because you're not looking. But what if I do that? That's what I'm looking at. Keep it simple, stupid. That was my thing to myself, talking to myself for many decades. And the reason why I'm 53 and still somewhat healthy is because I said, well, why would I reinvent the wheel? I haven't mastered the wheel yet. Why I'm not at this stage to reinvent it yet. So that's my thought.
I want to add one. We're going to talk, and you wanted to talk about, and maybe future episode, take a drink, is the post-show scrums, which is just a stupid thing. But I think we should leave that for another time because I want to give you one more to add to this. And this is such an epidemic in modern pro wrestling. And I also can never now not take an opportunity to dunk on Dave Meltzer and yet another unbelievably stupid thing he said. I don't have the tweet in front of me. I wish I did. But it was something to the effect of, AEW is so wonderful, so you know it's from him, that the talent has the option to have complete freedom and always go for the best match of the night. And I was like, that's the worst thing that you could possibly do for a show. Because guess what? Pretty much everybody thinks having the best match of the night is more flippy stuff, more WrestleMania kickouts, and getting your shit in. So if every single wrestler tries to get their shit in, and then by and large every match is pretty much the same throughout the card, then where's the variation? Where's the variety? Where is the build to the main event throughout the show? There isn't. You're just being given 3 hours of exactly the same pretty much. And all it does is wear the audience out. And if everyone's having a great Dave Meltzer style 5-star match, how many of those can you watch before you're sick of it? And as I say, once again, AEW's proving that by putting on the same kind of match that Meltzer likes and probably co-books unofficially or officially, whatever. And then the audience is dwindling. So, as I say, wrestlers have the freedom on the indies or AEW, wherever it may be, to have the match that they want. And that ends up being the worst thing.
You want to hear my summation of all that? The inmates running the asylum. That's the analogy. Here's if you want to write this down, I think this would be a great segment, maybe a whole episode, but I did the fundamentals of the professional wrestling match. What if we do a segment about there not only be psychology in a match, but the entire show, the entire card needs psychology. So maybe we can take a recent pay-per-view or a show where, like you said, straight across the board, it was duplicated. It was 12 lion tamers on the entire show, or 12 clowns or whatever. But I show what each match is supposed to do, where to put tag matches, what this match means, what that means, how you build, when you should start brawling, throwing punches, false finishes. I think that would be a great segment to do.
Absolutely. In fact, you suggested that to me months ago, and it's on our Google Doc for future episode Take a Drink.
But even
So
just
there
a
you go.
segment within a segment, if it would probably be a great reaction to, that's what I thought about doing with the art channel about fantasy booking or doing whatever with the smart board. But for this, maybe it's something that just happened where the entire show was unfortunately not very good. And we could say, well, it was pretty much one match done 12 times, if you look at it.
Okay, then. So, I mean, we did that for whatever the show was that Bryan Danielson lost the AEW World title because it was a hardcore match that followed a hardcore match that followed. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. It was the Swerve Strickland Adam Page
Yeah.
cage match with hardcore stuff in the needles, and that had followed Bryan Danielson being choked out with a plastic bag, which had followed another hardcore match with two women. Chris Statlander was in one of them.
Maybe we'll just
And we
make
just
it
thought-
generic. A generic like wrestler A, wrestler B, wrestler 1, wrestler 2 in each match. And it won't be very long, but it'll be very detailed.
Right, so of things that are bugging Stevie Richards in modern wrestling, I don't know if this is bugging him, but it's something that's happened more and more these last few years that I want to bring to your attention. It is a fairly big story in the pro wrestling world in the last couple of weeks, and I can see it from both sides, but it's also hard to sympathize with someone who's making a lot of money staying at home doing nothing. Anyway, Rey Fenix. Currently under contract with AEW, and that's the problem. So this is the latest in a long line of contract disputes with AEW, specifically between wrestlers and promoters and Tony Khan. And as of recent, wrestlers have been taking to social media to air their grievances in an effort to get released. I'll give a WWE example. Mustafa Ali was going on Twitter a couple of years ago and basically just begging to be let out of his contract. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Brody Lee was trying this at one point as well before he left to go to AEW. Am I misremembering there?
He was one of the more outspoken ones about that Saudi flight where only the top 20 left and they were all stranded. He took to social media and just kind of, he used to use like something about Larry in his tweets or something. But he was kind of vocal about that whole thing. And then he eventually did go to AEW. Rest in peace, by the way. It's so crazy to think that that guy's not here anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. With AEW in the contract, Ricky Starks, Danhausen, Miro, Rusev, and now Rey Fenix, among others, have been publicly complained. I don't know if Miro has, but no, he did complain about. No, he has complained. Anyway, Phoenix, along with his brother Penta, were in talks about heading to WWE this past August. They made it quite public that they were going to WWE and want to be signed. Now, Penta was near the end of his contract, but Phoenix, they both signed at the same time, but Phoenix was out with an injury for a long time. And he has now had his contract extended for injury time into the summer of 2025. Now, people like myself and a lot of people out there are reading this as punishment for openly wanting to go to WWE. And basically what Tony Khan seemingly is doing is keeping Penta at home and paying him just to either devalue him or to not get a bigger payday with WWE. There's more to add with this. But straight away, what are your opinions on the whole sort of keeping people signed who don't want to be there?
Well, that's super tough. In a way, this is kind of something where holdouts in the NFL or other sports, it can become news and talked about. So AEW and WWE, when this kind of stuff happens, to not embrace it in a way or have talking heads talking about it and kind of breaking that fourth wall, I think that adds to the realism of what's going on within a character or company or anything. You can make chicken you know what in the chicken salad if you want, because it's there for you. You can maximize the talent in a way. I would tell Rey Fenix this. WWE, the formula that I see work a lot in the old days at least, would be sometimes a tag team into a singles like the Hart Foundation and then Bret Hart. But I believe Penta going into WWE staggered from Rey Fenix going in. It's just an overarching kind of thing I'm thinking about. Establishing himself as a singles, getting into a storyline with maybe a group or a tag team that keeps beating him down. The summer of 2025, here comes Rey Fenix to help his brother out. So this can like literally work into a positive. And then Rey, right now, and the first mistake I see right here is going on Instagram Live and talking about it. I believe then the mystique. This is why I like the media scrums, which we're going to focus on. I really just dislike anything that kills the mystique of a wrestler, the character, the storyline, the angle. And here it's just people getting online to kind of complain. Ricky Starks has done interviews. I don't know why I'm being sad at home. What you're friends with Cody and whatever else is going on, or Punk. The mystery's solved already, right? It's Tony Khan being petty. In other words, AEW, they don't say it much anymore, but how many times did AEW say, we're not going to be like WWE. We're going to be different. Equal pay for everybody. Health insurance. We're going to treat our talent well. And to his credit, Tony's an incredibly generous guy. So I'm not talking about the money. Rey Fenix is being paid for his misery. Ricky Starks is being paid for his misery. Being paid very well from what I heard. So they're not starving, but they want out. And when I look at that, that's the toughest thing Tony Khan has to deal with. Not the wrestlers' egos, not the brawl out stuff, Punk and the EVPs, the growing number of people becoming dissatisfied. And what do you do to either satisfy them or cut them loose? Because this kind of stuff gets around the locker room. Everything gets around the locker room because telephone, tell a wrestler, or whatever way you want to put it. But there may be other people going, man, if I go to leave, what's Tony going to do to me? Maybe I should just peel back and not work as hard, because if I get hurt, he's going to extend my contract when I want to leave. It fosters a whole lot of problems that may not be on the surface now, but they're coming. I don't have a good answer for this. The number one answer I would have, Penta's leaving. So you know what I would do? Try to make Rey Fenix as happy as possible right now. Now, he might put people over because he wants to go, but I would do something to make him figured in. Paul Heyman, once again, say what you will about Paul. I talked about Axel Rotten, how him and Axel did not get along. But Paul squeezed every bit of what he could out of Axel. He didn't bury him, but he used him to get the BW over, used him to get this guy over, this person. He used them, but he also used them to benefit the talent that was staying. So Ricky Starks, and this is all part of business. Guess what? The fans aren't going to remember. We're not living in a day and age anymore, guys, where, oh my God, he did a job. We have to knock 100,000 off his deal. Oh my God, he did it. The fans are smart enough to know. They don't say he got jobbed out. They're going to say he didn't get used right, and I can't wait to see Rey Fenix get used correctly in WWE. And the best revenge for Rey Fenix and Ricky Starks right now, cash those checks, be professional, and shove it up Tony Khan's ass and AEW's ass when you're a major star in WWE. And guess what? Here's the chance you take. They may treat you even worse. You may never get out of NXT. It's a very subjective business. Somebody might look at you and say, what's so special about Penta and Rey Fenix? We got Andrade. We got this guy. We got Rey Mysterio. We got Dominic Mysterio. What's so special about these? It's like Vince used to say, and you can say, it's not a sensitive saying. It's not a politically correct saying, but Vince would be famous for saying, we already got one of those. What's so special about this one? That's the truth. Ricky Starks, what are you going to do? You're going to show up and dress like The Rock, which Edge kind of dressed you down literally for. What's your character going to be? What are you going to, you're going to wear the same sunglasses and be this? These are things they need to reinvent themselves before they even get there. So I went around the block or around the world with that, but I feel in a way bad for Tony, even though a lot of it, I would say more of his inaction has created this kind of toxicity in the locker room. And I skipped over Rusev or Miro. Miro's got a reputation for complaining. He may not go back to WWE, so maybe he wants to kind of make, you know what, into something positive. That's all I'm saying. And guess what? In this economy, people are struggling. People are losing their jobs. People are losing their homes. Things are getting rough out there. Nobody's going to feel sorry for any of you. So make what you can out of it. And that's
He
from a guy.
said,
That's from a guy. Watch the episode. I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
no, no.
That's from a guy that didn't know what he had and didn't know the investment of TV time and money and all this stuff and didn't appreciate it, was too immature to know better and wasted maybe $1 million payoffs that I could have got if I did business correctly. No, there's no way of knowing, but just speaking from a person that did make these mistakes, cash those checks and make Tony love you once again, at least for now.
The perception of people wanting to leave is obviously a bad look. Now, that being said, I think the worst thing that Tony Khan could do is let these guys go out of their contract early, because that sort of all tells people, hey, if you're unhappy in this company, you could just, as you alluded to beforehand, you could just do a perfunctory job. You could just, you just do the basics and just not put the effort in, or refuse to do certain things, or just go on social media and complain. And well, if it worked for this guy, then it'll work for me. I can get out of my contract and do what I want to do. That's sort of the worst thing that Tony Khan could do, is let these guys go. But I also want to say, why not at least use them? Because it's throwing good money after bad. You're basically you're paying someone six figures pretty much, I guess, to stay at home. You're draining your own bank account for no return. So as you said before, why don't you just bring them back and just work on Rampage or Collision? Put Bandido over, or who's that guy who constantly loses? The other luchador.
Stevie Richards?
No, oh, you never wore a mask, for goodness sake. No, who's...
I know you talked about him. Good Lord, I forget his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Because you were like, what is this guy doing? Yeah, I remember you criticized Commando.
Commando, yeah. It's like he constantly loses, and then they put him in the Continental Classic because someone else got injured. And they're like, well,
we do
he'll
live
have
in a
great
world where you
matches.
fail upwards. We do live in a world where that happens.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, he never wins. And then they thought, well, let's just put him in the Continental Classic because he'll have great matches. And it's like, all you're doing there is you're putting a loser in a supposedly prestigious tournament. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that what do you do with these guys? If you don't want to use them in a proper place, fine, but either get something out of your investment. You've got 180 people on the roster for starters. Get rid of 100.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know why? If Tony actually sat down with these talents one by one or together or whatever, one-on-one would be great. Very exhausting, but it would be great. If he explained to them, your deal's coming up at this time. We are going to use you. We're going to try to get you over to a certain level, but you're really going to put a lot of guys over on the way out. That's just the way to do business. We're not going to completely job you out or embarrass you. We want to make it to where if it doesn't work out there, we've set the table maybe for you to come back here where nobody is hurt either way, the company nor you. But you are going to put people on the last 4 to 6 months of your deal, put them over on the way out. Keep yourself healthy. We're not going to put you in any goofy positions or anything, because then Tony has to pay him and pay for the surgeries, so it protects both people. You don't think with that conversation that only an unreasonable talent that just wants to get their way like a spoiled brat would react negatively to that kind of meeting? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it sort of strikes me, as I've just written a note here, that they're both burning the same bridge at the same time. Tony's, yes, paying him, keeping him miserable. And we're going to talk more about Rey Fenix in a second, what he said. But Tony Khan isn't using these wrestlers how they want to be used, although he's basically ignoring them. So he's burning a bridge with them. And then someone like Rey Fenix, on the other hand, is publicly maligning Tony Khan and burning a bridge the other way. So that it's just a scorched earth policy all the way around. And as you said before, wrestling is a transient business. You go one place for a bit, you go another place, then you come back years later, and you keep that sort of professional relationship healthy. So the way you suggested would be the perfect way. Hey, you're not getting everything you want, but at least you're getting TV time. At least you're doing what you love, and you're still getting paid to do it.
Yeah, we promise not to embarrass you. And that goes against every wrestling promoter DNA. It's not embarrassing, because it's very personal, but it's a business, but they take it personally when they choose to. This is where a JR is needed. Not specifically, although I wish he would take the job. you need somebody to negotiate the contracts as a talent relations president, vice president. I know Chris Daniels is in talent relations, but you need to empower somebody to handle the contracts. Tony handling the contracts and the creative, it's just a recipe for disaster. It's really like, how can you go from being the booker to now sitting down talking money with somebody, then going back to booking and talking to somebody about money as they're trying to get booked in a better position for more money? Say what you will about Vince and JR or whatever that good cop, bad cop thing was set up in WWE to protect Vince so people can't get to him. There is somewhat of a benefit. Plus, how can you say it's weird that you're talking to Tony as if he's not there, but it's a different version of Tony as you're talking about Tony not using you correctly? Do you see the confusion? It's very, very awkward. And Tony seems like a guy who doesn't like to have awkward conversations either.
I'm going to ask you the question first, but then I'm going to fill in the blank. So the question will be, is there a benefit to complaining publicly? But I'm going to give you some quotes. Phoenix addressed his current situation saying, quote, "We must wait," and stressing the importance of professionalism. Here's the quote. And it makes no sense anyway. "There are many things that are not known, but also should not be talked about. We must wait. Professionalism first and foremost, folks. Keep in mind," he said that. "We must not be the same as all those podcasts that go around spitting out what they should not be spit out. Never diminish our work. There are things that should always be respected, and many are forgetting everything that wrestling has given them." So a bit of a word soup there. But a couple more quotes. Phoenix on
Good
Instagram.
Lord, was he running for president this year? What a word salad is this?
There had been a huge injustice, he had suggested, basically, that there was more to the story other than just being kept, his injury time being extended into the summer of 2025. And there's more to that story, he claims. And that he would further complain that, quote, "No one stays in a place where they received inhumane treatment." And he also complained, "I needed a doctor and you," being Tony Khan and AEW, I guess, "ignored me for months." Now, I also want to say this. WWE, they sort the doctors out, whereas AEW, and then they pay for the doctors, obviously, whereas in AEW, if there's an injury in the ring, that kind of thing, you source your own doctors, your own medical issue, expenses, and then AEW reimburse you for that. So, that being said, we can dive more into Rey Fenix, what he said, but is there a benefit to complaining publicly?
I want to comment on the doctor thing because it does have some validity, because Punk said that in the Ariel Helwani interview, that he paid for his surgery on the tricep, and in WWE it was kind of all set up for him. So that's something that's very strange, where AEW, when they started, said it was going to be the opposite way, right? That it wasn't going to be.
Well, they said health insurance and all that kind of thing, and then it just becomes the same as, I mean, didn't Extreme Rising that you work for, they were claiming pensions and health insurance?
It was all the Charlie Brown teacher to me, because I've heard ever since that and Wrestlers Rescue, there's always something that's going to pop up to help the boys, and never help yourself. You're independent contractors, but you're actually employees. If you watch our recent clip, where you get about 18 of the 20 or whatever. Now with this, does it ever help to complain? It's hard to say. It works out for some. Once again, we're talking about maybe your value as a human being that complains depending upon your push. But if you're getting a super push and you're getting paid well, are you complaining then? Maybe some pro wrestlers would, because, well, you put me in the main event, but I'm not the champion. There's always a way that wrestlers will complain and shoot themselves in the foot. I think it's more of the inhumane treatment is kind of interesting, because once again, AEW does not want to be known for that. And Tony Khan, we talked about on the Dutch Dave Meltzer story a little bit, and you've went into more detail on your channel in story time, so please check it out. Tony Khan might be the most humane person in wrestling. Not inhumane, but humane. I've never seen the level of humanity from a wrestling promoter for people that may never have worked for the company or he doesn't know. So that's weird. Inhumane treatment. Now, how should I say? Be given the runaround, be going through red tape, having to do all the work yourself to find a doctor. That's not, that's very wrong. when you're under contract with a company that has actually direct ties to the NFL and their doctors and all that stuff. That's very, very strange. But I don't know if you go as far as inhumane without instances and facts to back that up. That's a pretty hefty allegation. Do you get that impression?
Yeah, but the other thing is that I'm pretty sure in the contract he signed, at some point, if you denigrate the company or Tony Khan or whatever in that vein too much or too specifically, that might be a suspendable offence without pay. And then when Tony decides to bring you out of suspension, that's when your injury time clause with the contract then starts up again. So when you say complaining publicly, this could be the absolute worst thing for him because, well, I'm going to suspend you because you breached your contract. And then guess what? You're another year away from WWE where you want to be.
Yeah. There's also a thing to be said, too, about Rey Fenix killing his mystique. This is hurting his character that potentially could go to WWE. And also, it's the old saying, if this person is saying this about that person, what happens when they're dealing with me? What do they say behind my back? So WWE might be looking at this going, is Rey Fenix going to be a problem? They might have two strikes against him before he even gets there, if he even gets there, because somebody might be like, no, we saw all that stuff. We don't want him. TKO and Endeavor are very, very careful about what goes on social media. So they don't want a loose cannon like this doing that. So I agree with you that this could hurt him a bunch of different, it's going to hurt him more than Tony Khan. Here's an idea, though. This is where Vince McMahon did the right thing, and Dixie Carter, in a little bit of a way, did the right thing. There was so much criticism, so many people turning on them, that they needed to turn heel. Do we see a heel authority Tony Khan in the future? Because if he does it right, that's the only way to save this. Or, bring back the Shane McMahon thing. If Tony turns into an owner that runs out of control and Shane McMahon is brought in by WBD to put AEW back on track, a little bit of reality there too. That could be a storyline that can make sense. Now Rey Fenix could go on the Shane McMahon side, or Miro. There could be a host of talents that go to the Shane side. Now they have a purpose, and Tony may not even have to deal with them on a creative level anymore. Just an idea.
I hope not, though. I mean, the whole Dixie thing was awful. And it's so played out.
Well, you know what it was? It was
wrestling trope 101.
I predicted she was going to put the world title on herself. That was my prediction. The indie promoter times 1,000. Come on, man. That's why I've been guessing for 5 years or more that Tony Khan is going to put the belt on himself. And I'm sticking to that prediction. Staying with it.
Hey, it worked for Vince. But the thing is, Vince is just an outlier. Vince was, for all his faults as a person, the greatest heel in history.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you just happen to be the owner. You also just happen to be the greatest heel who ever lived.
And now we know why. And now we know why.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, turn it up to 11, baby. 3. Yeah, turn it up to 11. But, Dixie was awful. Tony Khan's even worse, as far as being an on-screen authority figure. And it's just been done to death, and everyone does it. I mean, do you know what we're really missing is Jack Tunney. Just someone just to come out occasionally and be an old man and just be authoritative, and this is how it's going to be. And then just to advance the storyline and then get rid of him again for 3 months. That's all you need.
We need to do for Patreon or here. In the Tunney
best
estate,
of Jack Tunney.
The Tunney estate is very careful because I was thinking about making a Jack Tunney for president thing, and they shut it down right away. So they're very protective of his intellectual property. But we should do a reaction. One of my favorite segments. I'm trying to think. I think it's when Bobby Heenan brought out. It might have been on Brother Love's thing or something like that. Brought out the World Heavyweight title. I don't think it was Brother Love wasn't around yet. But Tunney seemed to be feeling really, really good. And Bobby was showing the belt. He's like, hey, give me that. And like Tunney's like, it was such an awkward, like it was the most amount of like energy I've ever seen from Jack Tunney. But I used to love when he sit there and he goes, I do declare that this match will be a world heavyweight title match, as he's reading like back and forth like the old WCW promos where he had to read the teleprompter like that.
And flub his lines constantly as well. WWF, I think the last time he was live, I might be wrong on this, was when Bret Hart and Yokozuna were signing a contract in like '93, and then everything. The few times he was on TV after, we were all like pre-tapes. I think someone's gonna show me up and tell me I'm wrong there, but
We got it. Well, that's what this whole thing's about, us being proved wrong. So,
yeah, hey, I'm always happy to be proved wrong. Okay, then. So the first of our visual segments of this episode. Sorry, audio fans and podcast listeners. This is Survivor Series, WWE Survivor Series 2024. Once again, we did a video last week on Nia Jax. And this week, because the full extent of the injury that Bronson Reed suffered, we're going back to Survivor Series 2024 once again for a dive off of the top of the cage. It turns out that Bronson was rather more hurt than we thought, or everybody thought, until it was revealed a few days ago. So, over to Stevie, what went wrong?
thank you, James. Oh, by the way, right here, big fan of the show. Charles Robinson tells me he enjoys the show each and every week. So hopefully that doesn't get him a ton of heat. Love you, Charles. There you are right there. Feel bad for Bronson Reed, though. Bronson Reed finally found his niche, his momentum. He was figured in, and this match was a big deal for him, being part of the new bloodline and being one of the top heels. And they had protected him with multiple tsunami splashes and everything. They've really done a creative favor to Bronson Reed up to this point. So I also want to say I got to give WWE credit. I've climbed my cages from time to time. I love these little platforms for people with bad balance like myself. I do know
It's like Mat Rats. Do you remember Mat Rats from decades ago?
I do not.
That was an under 18s wrestling thing where they had platforms on the ropes.
I wish I would go to the top rope a lot more if they had that, but then it looks higher than it. Sometimes it looks high when you're up there, so I would probably climb back down. So I know what went wrong with this. We're going to go through and show the splash, the injury, but I know exactly why he broke his ankle. So let's play this. This is a fan cam angle. Here he goes. Boom. All right, so here's the official viewpoint. I love this camera angle, by the way. I don't like how it ended up for Bronson Reed, but a great camera angle. And I'm going to tell you exactly what went wrong right now. This and this. The reason why Bronson Reed broke his ankle is because Punk had to pull Roman Reigns off the table, which means he had to land and then splash the table. He was trying to be safe. He was trying to be safe, land on his feet, then do the splash to give them time to pull it off. Now, I say what could have went wrong, James, and everybody out there, is Punk pulling Roman Reigns off the table and the table going in this direction. Then Bronson Reed is literally splashing the edge of the table. So it's really not a great spot to set up. In theory, you think it might be good, but man, too much can go wrong. So let's go slow-mo here. There's his ankle right there. I'm going to zoom in. His ankle is right there. This ankle coming down right here is the one that breaks. Oh. Look at it go pointing that way now. So that's his ankle. Back it up again. And you could just see, boom. And he's lucky. Punk and Roman almost didn't get out of there on that. So that's that right there. Now here is the picture-in-picture shot of it. This is live over here. And this is a replay as he comes down. See, you can see Punk. The timing of it is great. He just jumps off and Punk is pulling him. So it's too late. Sometimes they pull off, mostly in the girls' matches, and then they dive 3 seconds after that without a camera cut. At least the timing was done well. But here you can see a little bit more. See that his foot was already turned as he's coming down. See, he's trying to brace himself So when he lands, if he had landed with the toe pointed straight instead of this way, show if the toe was pointed that way, he might have blew his knee out still. He might have twisted the ankle or did whatever, but he landed with his foot at a 45-degree angle or almost a 45-degree angle. And the weird part is I expected him to grab his ankle, James, and he didn't. He just laid there like he was selling. Maybe he was in shock, but here it is. And even then, when you look at his foot, you know, usually the ankle is completely turned when it breaks. His foot looks like it, unless it was really taped well and it just snapped. Usually your foot goes in one direction or the other, and his foot seemingly was fine. So here's the other angle right here. As he goes, you can see Punk grabbing Roman Reigns. I'm going to zoom in right there to see how close we can get. That gives you a little bit of an idea right there. Oh, you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Right there. So once it lands, but see, it's landing already in a position to snap and twist. That's it. That happened right there. That was kind of like when Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, but worse. He kind of had a little bit of his foot was off step from where it usually is when he was scrambling. And there it goes right there. So what went wrong is obviously this is what went wrong. If he was allowed to splash Roman Reigns, it would be fine because he could come down with all his weight. But because he was trying to be safe and protect Roman Reigns and Punk and give them time to pull Roman off the table, that's what he did. He landed feet first and then splashed. See what I mean? His feet touched. And usually it's a half a second, but you still know the guy's taking your full weight with the splash. This was him, his feet and the right ankle especially was taking all 350 pounds of his weight, and he's down. It sucks, dude. Man, you know, I hate to see a talent, especially a talent that basically is on the rise, is ready to make real money. And this guy was released and came back, got a new coat of paint on him, was made into a monster. You know, dare I say it, too much 50-50 booking. He would be even more over if they really took care of him. But in this way, he was on the road to really be figured into the upper mid-card or main event for a while. And this sucks. And you said he's going to miss WrestleMania too.
Yeah, it seems that the latest, the latest amount of time that he's going to have to take off is something like 8 months. So WrestleMania is what, 5 months away, 4 months away, something? Yeah, 5 months away, something like that. So he's going to miss off
basically
on a fairly big
SummerSlam
payday as well.
So basically SummerSlam if they're going to bring him back in a big way.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I do believe, I'm almost 100% sure it's because of the spot of Punk pulling Roman off and not wanting to move the table and him not wanting to be there too soon. In other words, he saw it and he's like feet first and make sure he just barely clears that I almost splashed him. In theory, great spot, smart spot. My guess is Punk and Roman came up with that and they kind of workshopped it a little bit. But man, just one of the true monsters. This dude here, and I know I'm kind of waxing poetic about him, but I was a big fan of his work. The push he had is the push that Braun Strowman should have been able to sustain. And has been so much, it's just a lack of fulfilling potential with Braun Strowman. But this guy looked like he was going to fulfill it.
You said something very, very telling at the beginning. Bronson Reed was trying to be safe. Do you remember a few months ago in AEW, who dove off the top of a cage and tried to be safe and also ended up hurting his leg?
Edge.
Exactly. He tried to be safe. He tried to land on his feet first to give. Was it Malachi Black he was facing?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and apart from and there's actually weird booking corollary, if I can say that word, between that and this as well, because we'll talk about Edge in a second, but 2 minutes after Bronson Reed does the dive, then Jimmy Uso does a dive and puts Jacob Fatu through a table. The exact same thing 2 minutes later. Edge does the dive, injures himself, no one really remembers it, and then 2 minutes later, Gangrel debuts for AEW, and that's the big spot. So it's almost eerily similar how these two things were put together.
If Bronson Reed, and this is where the only critique I would have of him, your ego, your wrestling ego says, I'm going to do a splash off the top of the cage. I'm 350 pounds. People are going to ooh and ah, and Punk's going to pull Roman off, and I'm going to take myself out. In theory, smart. But how many minutes later is Jimmy Uso going to hit the same exact splash for the finish? So why am I going to, whether he got hurt or not, people are going to forget because that's the replay until Bronson comes back. But then again, if Bronson comes back as a heel, they're not going to show the footage because guess what that footage would do? Provide sympathy for Bronson Reed. Are we going to show a comeback trailer? Are we going to show, the road to recovery or any of this stuff? No. So I would have said, I'm not doing that. If anything, you know how I would have done it? It would have really made him stand out. Had everybody beat him down after he was trying to beat everybody down, beat him down, have a false panel to the cage and throw him through the cage and take him out. That would have made a moment. Then you know what would have happened there? It would have opened up for interference and made War Games like more wild. That's what I see.
Now, this is going to be more of a technical question then. So, as we know, Bronson Reed landed on his feet first, broke his foot. I think it's his foot that was broken. His ankle and foot, collapsed, I'm sure. How would you position your feet for the landing? Would you have your toes pointed out like a ballerina? So essentially, your ankle and your foot is one flat surface or as much as it can be. Or would you put your foot out to the side? So sort of the instep of your foot's landing on the mat instead. What's the more safe of those two options?
Well, the safest version is to leave Roman Reigns on the table and you hit the splash and your feet never touch. That's it. If he's missing, dare I say it, what I would have done if I were Bronson Reed, not off the top of the cage, but especially since there's a cage spot right after that, top of the cage, I would have done his senton off the top rope like Bubba used to miss it and put himself through the table. Just a back bump.
Okay, let's forget the top rope cage or anything else. Where should your feet be if you're just doing like even a splash, a standing splash? Where should your feet be?
Well, if you're hitting or missing, I mean, that's where wrestlers start to overthink it and say, I should land on my feet. This is my weakness. A face, a chest, and a stomach bump. People that have that ability to splash. Think about it. Whenever Val Venus misses the money shot, I've wrestled him plenty of times, the splash off the top rope. Eddie Guerrero misses it. What do they usually do? They're pancaked. They don't land on their feet at all. In other words, whether you're hitting or missing, you never land on your feet because you'll end up like Edge. You'll end up like Bronson Reed. And dare I say it, like Eddie Guerrero when he came and he debuted and he overshot the splash and he dislocated his elbow. Remember that injury?
Mm-hmm.
That's because he took it there instead of, listen, we're all adults. It's not ballet. You can knock the wind out of me. I'd rather you knock the wind out of me than break your ankle or foot. That's just the business.
How high's the cage these days, do you think? I was looking.
Too high for me.
It's over 10 foot, maybe 10 to 12.
No. I would say the apron is a good 3 to 4 feet. 3 feet, let's call it.
But the landing's within the ring, though. Yeah.
No, but on top, you got to figure the ringing because you're on top of the cage. The cage is a good 15 feet, I think.
But that'll be off the floor, though, not from the ring, because, the landing from the ring, into the ring from the top of the cage. So the fall is going to be, 11 foot?
It's going to be way more. You're standing up there, it's going to feel like 1,000 feet. That's that's the long and the short of it, the high and the low of it. You're up there looking, because when you're up there and you're going to splash, guess what? Now you have to factor in, like when you come from the top rope and you want to splash. RVD was the best at this, so was Eddie. because they could both turn, extend, go short. They had such an eye for their depth perception was awesome. But when you're on top of the cage and you're looking out and you're like, do I fall straight? If I jump out, am I overshooting? Dude, there's way more thought that goes into that. Even when you're doing like Jeff Hardy missing a swanton, Kurt Angle with that moonsault off the top of the cage that he missed. Dude, it's tough. This is what makes pro wrestlers. Here's a spot. Remember the WrestleMania, the COVID WrestleMania with Gronk and Vince had to show him how to fall off the balcony? He was terrified, and rightfully so, because you're looking, and not only that, you're falling backwards. And that was probably a good 10 to 15 feet up. So it's an incredibly dangerous thing. And this is where I'm saying, like I think I brought it up last time, with the Nia Jax chair shot. If you're unsure and you're having butterflies and you're not sure what to do and you're a little nervous about it, you got to cut the spot out. You're always going to be a little bit nervous, but if you're unsure, you're like, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, cut it. Cut it right there.
I've got to disagree with you something. So you were saying the camera angle, and you really love the camera angle, shooting upwards with Bronson Reed coming down. I prefer the Jimmy, this is the most obvious reference, but the Jimmy Snuka hard cam shot. You know what I mean? So he's on top of the cage, but it's the hard cam. But you have him at the top of the cage, zoomed into a point, but you can see the flashbulbs going off in that example rather than the people. But also, the Money in the Bank shot, where two people are fighting on top of the ladder, they're zooming in, but you can see the people reacting, blurred in the background, but you can see that movement behind, and I think that's more cinematic for my tastes, I guess. People used to love WrestleMania 10 with Shawn Michaels when he dove off the ladder, splash to Razor Ramon. And I never loved that shot. Loads of people say, wow, it's like he's diving straight into your living room, but I always loved the zoomed out shot further. That's my personal preference.
Well, they have both. So WWE shoots multiple camera angles for B-roll, for packages, for cinematics. I think they even have a camera, because TNA had the dedicated camera that was working on it off a different frame rate, I think 24 frames a second, if I'm not mistaken. And they were shooting with a different lens, and you knew it was film. They have a dedicated, I'd love to know the backstage production with that. Who's working that? Do they already know what they're trying to capture since they know mostly what's going to happen in the matches? Are they kind of writing a script like you do to say, this is what we have for this, that, like, how do they do it? My favorite thing, you want to talk about my favorite thing, WWE, the most impressive thing, they do a lot of impressive stuff. Remember there was that era at the end of the pay-per-views where they showed the highlighted replay to music at the end of the show? Like, how did you put that together? Like, whoever did that is like, please teach me, as I say. That is an amazing on-the-fly, boom, 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 boom. Get the music, cut it to the music, do that, and have it ready by 11 p.m. Dude, can't be understated.
They being UFC is who I'm referencing. UFC does that where they have one camera and they always film the entrances with it. I don't know if they do it now because I just don't really watch much UFC because it's so boring now. But the last few years they had one camera that was obviously like a high millimeter lens, blurry background, different frame rate, cinematic. But they would actually occasionally cut to it in the live pay-per-view. But you knew they were going to use that for, post cinematics.
Yeah.
A cinematic like post.
So they're using like a prime lens, but they're still keeping it at 30 frames a second. Or they might be shooting in 60 because then they can do slow-mo with that.
Yeah, but it's still a completely different frame rate within the pay-per-view broadcast.
See, that's weird. I can mess things up.
Yeah, they do use it, but weirdly it looks good for what they do. But that being said, different show. Upcoming show, Take a Drink. We can get so into the production of wrestling that I'd love to as well. Now, we're going to go to something that you said beforehand. You made mention with Nia Jax once again. We said if you're unsure of a spot or something that you've got planned, don't do it. And this really leads to our next subject of how to get a match right without practicing or talking it through or planning it in the minutiae every stage of it in advance. I don't think it's a secret that wrestling these days is rather a lost art, or the lost art of calling it in the ring, quote unquote. Every match now is meticulously planned and over the course of many hours or even days. Text messaging in the middle of the night wouldn't be a great idea. Wouldn't it be cool to do this? That's your cue to
Famous
get up and
last
leave.
words. You know what would be cool? Hang up. That's why I put it on Do Not Disturb. First of all, if you're texting me at night, you know that I'm already in bed.
That being said, calling it in the ring, how many times did you ever call a match pretty much entirely in the ring, apart from knowing what the finish might be?
One of the most famous ones that I'm proud of, and I think Nigel McGuinness even spoke about it on Jericho's podcast. TNA, we were working, was it a implosion? Oh, what was it? I forget what it was. Explosion. I was going to say implosion. Yeah. It was their Stevie Night Heat. So there was somebody or something happened and a match was canceled. And literally, they came up to myself and Nigel were standing in the vicinity of each other. We were not dressed. We were not ready. They said, guys, you got to get out there in 5 minutes and give us a 6 to 8 minute match. Ran back, I didn't even have my gear on, nothing. Put everything on. Nigel got his on first, and he literally was out there first while his music's playing. Literally didn't have the finish, but I knew his finish. They said Nigel's going over. I knew it would be the Tower of London. I came out, you could see that it was still like I literally just wet my hair in the back as my music was playing, went through. We had our match with nothing called, except I said, move, do your finish. I did the split the turnbuckle like Bobby Eaton. He did his finish. That was it. Even within that, if you go back, it's on YouTube, there was a struggle. We chain wrestled. There was shine, there was heat, there was the comeback. And then even when he went to hit me with the Tower of London, I tried to resist to try to start to headlock him, and he threw my arm back. That little thing was one of my favorite nuances in that match. And he knew it. Like, he didn't come back and go, why'd you put your arm here? He goes, dude, that was so cool that you weren't giving it to me because I wasn't knocked out. And he had to throw it back and then drop me, which, by the way, was a face bump that I took sort of okay, but not great. The reason it worked was only one reason. Number one, there was many reasons, but the number one reason was because we both didn't do things that we were weak at, and also at the same time as like a 1A, 1B. Nigel knew what I did because my stuff wasn't complicated, and I knew what Nigel did. So I knew Nigel had the forearm in the corner. He had other things. He didn't do any of those real headbutts or anything, but we kept it and he worked the arm to set up for the Tower of London. So the heat was on my arm, although in the shine, I worked the arm. And the reason why I worked the arm is because it's the easiest body part to work when you don't have everything laid out. In other words, tackle, drop down, hip toss. In other words, he goes for something, I arm drag him over. I can put him in an arm bar. I can shine over him. He can try to fight back. I take his arm again. Things like that make it very easy to call into the ring. Is it my preference? It's somewhere in the middle. I would kind of love to know, hey, we didn't have time to do like the most important thing, I think, before a match. What's hurting? What do you need me to stay away from? What would you like me to do? What bumps do you take that you're comfortable with? That's the weakness of just, hey, let's just call it out there in the ring. I like to be more prepared to keep my opponent safe and to keep the match very, very impactful and strong and making sense. But if I have to say, for calling 100% of a match, that was probably one of my favorite matches, called or not called, in the ring. But that's what you need. And the only thing that makes that possible is repeatedly being put in that situation and tested. I was put in a situation in ECW many times where we need 40, 45. We got like 5 spots, but we just kind of winged it. We got lucky, I think, because I was very inexperienced. In WWE, maybe not the best thing to do to somebody, but they would switch the opponents out on me sometimes and just send somebody else. Or when he got in the ring, they would say, hey, by the way, you're not a heel anymore. You're the babyface. He's the heel. So they would they would play these little tricks, but in a way, I really appreciated the tests because it kept me sharp. And when I was driving to a building, I was saying, okay, let me think about everybody on the show tonight. Let me think about a match. And it's maddening at the same time, but let me think about everybody on the show, what kind of match I could have with them as a babyface and a heel. Let's think about if I'm going over, dude, it'll drive you nuts. But at the same time, I had that in my computer too, not one of Vince's 3 or 4 computers. I only have one, but I had that in my computer to basically be like, in the future, I know how to work somebody in any way. And I watched Nigel in Ring of Honor. It was one of my favorite matches to watch during cardio. Him and Bryan Danielson, him and other people, and I was prepared for it. So I was kind of a student of the game. My question now is, how much of the talent watch other matches? How much of the talent watch everybody else's work to be prepared like that? My answer would probably be not very often. You know, you got to do that in order to familiarize yourself with everybody and be prepared for the office to mess with you and come out shining from it. So, is there a way to really call it in the ring? You have to have very, very bad matches first where you call it in the ring. You have to fail. You have to be lost. You have to be blown up. You have to be clueless. And you have to have somebody eventually, if not sooner rather than later, that can call the entire match and lead you until you're good enough to do the same thing. Because there's nothing worse. What's worse than calling a match in the ring when you're scared is when you're the one that has to call half of it and you two are on completely different pages. That's a recipe for disaster.
So basically, someone has to take charge immediately, say, I'm calling this, that's that.
Well, Dutch has probably told the story that I think the formula was when a new talent came in to say Florida, Georgia, wherever, Memphis, they were always a babyface because the heel would lead the match. And usually you wouldn't turn heel until you had the experience to lead a match. It worked out storyline wise or character wise because you start out, everybody starts out with innocence, you know, Jeff Jarrett. Haha. They start out very innocent, white meat babyface. But as they get more experience, what happens? They become more grizzled. They become more cynical. It's life, right? You come out and you're innocent, you're a baby, you're a child. When you get older, you become more grizzled, cynical. In a way, everybody becomes a heel. That's, I think, if Dutch hasn't explained it, that's the natural formula progression to call a match. You got to be a heel. And it's an easy way. It's an easy way to classify people in the match. Like if I'm a babyface now and I'm wrestling, say, I don't know, Billy Gunn, who would be the heel. What do you want to do, Billy? And he'd be like, what do you want to do? I'm like, dude, you're the heel. I would always defer because he leads the pacing, the gears, when the heat spot happens, when the comeback happens, when the finish happens too. The heel is integral for that. And that's why a lot of times I feel very bad for really great heels. You know why? They always make less money than baby faces because of the merchandise and all that stuff. I always felt like the promoters and the company should reward the heels more because they are the most important part of every wrestling match, in my opinion.
Just to round this story off, because it's basically a story about Nigel McGuinness and just how good he was.
And
Really,
actually
the
still
question
is. He's still working. He's still every bit as good, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. That being said, he's one of those guys that's such a what if. And I think the story goes that when he went to WWE initially, he stupidly told the truth about his injury history. And basically, WWE found him like either uninsurable or too much of a risk to put back in the ring. And then eventually he gets a commentary position for NXT. And then he ends up going to AEW and becoming a commentator there. But I mean, if Nigel had not been honest about his injury history and whatever else that stopped him from being a star in WWE, how far could he have gone?
Oh, yeah, all the way. All the way. You think about Gunther. Gunther's basically Nigel McGuinness. I remember, and I don't know if I actually texted him or had a conversation with him. We were talking here and there when I was in WWE. I remember going on my way to the gym in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, I believe. And that's when we were getting into the gym and we got the news that they weren't going to hire him or they released him for those medical issues. And my heart sank because I was like, I wanted to work Nigel because I watched his ROH work and I was like, oh, I can't wait to work him. Maybe I'll be his first match, or it was like going to be cool. So when we did have that match in TNA, it was kind of a bucket list thing and a bucket list item of people I wanted to work. So Nigel fulfilled that, as Desmond Wolfe, not Nigel McGuinness, but I call him Nigel McGuinness. But I do remember that day and my heart like really hurt for him because you're going from ROH making not even really okay money to now being called up by the show, and you can make some life-changing money. And especially with his medical history, well, God, man, we can make some money. It's all worth it now. So I was, not to beat it to death, but man, I just felt bad for him.
Speaking of feeling bad for people, we're going to go on to our, not the main event segment. It's sort of our final segment. It's what went wrong. And it is somewhere between what went wrong, but it's on purpose. And it's in the vein of the Shaky Heights Spike and Yokozuna's Banzai Drop. A lot of people wrote in and said, well, certain wrestlers had a finisher that they would do two different versions. One of them would be against the enhancement talent, which would be very, very hard to take. And one of them would be against the stars, where there would be an easier version of the finisher. And a lot of people have accused Scott Hall, the late Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, depending on what company he was in, of doing the Razor's Edge or the Outsider's Edge or whatever you want to call it, differently to enhancement talent to the stars. We've got a compilation from, I can't remember the YouTube channel, is it Jurgen's Rest Comps or something like that?
Yeah, we have it up here, Jurgen's compilations. Yes.
Fantastic. There we go. He put a compilation up. Thank you very much for doing that. He made our job a lot easier. And Stevie, take us through the different versions of the Outsider's Edge, the Razor's Edge, and what do you see differently?
I have an Easter egg in this compilation, by the way. I want you and everybody out there to comment below and let me know what the Easter egg is, because you mentioned it just a minute or two ago. I'm going to let it go. Well, the first thing I want to say that it takes an incredible amount of strength. Picking up for the power bombs, one thing, he goes over his shoulder. This part with Scott, Razor Ramon, to do this is all him. The wrestler's legs, as you see right here, are dangling. There's no assistance. This thing here is a shoulder press. So Scott is literally shoulder pressing 200, 250-pound guys like dead weight behind his neck. So if you ever tried to press behind your neck, it's not safe as it is, but trying to do it with a human body, we can't like overstate that enough that Scott was a strong dude. So let's play this through. This is the first one, Diamond Stud. Pretty safe there. He folded over, but he landed him pretty good. And here is another one. Dude, I just want to say, I wish I was in the shape Scott was in. That was, I mean, he was just like, and that wasn't even as biggest. Well, this might have been near his biggest. Razor Ramon, he leaned out. He looked great. So bring it down here. Now, I will say this as we back it up, just on this one. He's landing a guy kind of high like a power bomb. It's not the safest way to land, but Scott is definitely, he's not doing a border toss like Hernandez. Let's put it out there. Comparing the two, this is 100 times safer than Hernandez's version, even the enhancement talent version. Boom. Here's one here. And here's one here. It's just that the thing is with this bump, because he's coming like sliding down almost, not really being thrown, it tends to have your ankles and your feet above your head for the fold anyway. So he adjusted that. He kind of threw guys out to take like just a flat bump. We'll see it on a couple occasions, but naturally it's going to come down. I'm going to do it right here. You see the guy's naturally coming down like this. Now you see this guy's tucking his chin. isn't going to help him a whole lot, but it's not going to hurt either. And here he comes down right there. Here's the WWE version. Pretty safe. It's definitely going to give you a little bit of a headache, but not too bad. This is the money right here. Scott standing like that, that's the razor's edge. The drop is one thing, but that's truly the position where everybody's looking up like, wow, you know? So here he goes. Nice camera cut there. Now this is where he starts doing it different because this is Tito Santana, El Matador. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
This is where there is a glaring difference, but I have to give it to Scott. Very much respectful to a veteran and not wanting to hurt a veteran. I know the two-tier society we talked about in the Yokozuna spot. I get that, and that's true. But the fact that he could have took advantage of Tito, boom. Enhancement talent. That one there, I don't know. This guy's kind of throwing his legs over. Do you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Scott he landed him pretty safe, and the guy rolled over.
Yeah, so are you putting it on the enhancement guy, or are you putting it on Scott? Because it doesn't look any different to any of the first ones you showed.
I'm putting it a little bit on the enhancement talent, wanting to take the folding bump. Because look at his legs. Scott lands him flat pretty much, but then his legs take him over. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's scary, man. It's a scary bump to take. You know, it's not going to be the easiest bump. It's going to be a little rough. Did you catch the Easter egg?
Oh, Beverly Brother. Is that what you...
The Shaker Heights spike.
Yeah,
so a little bit of
spike,
karma there, but he took care of them. Now, these are two Minnesota guys from AWA. So they know each other, I'm sure. Yeah. And Mike took a great bump. Oh, DiBiase. Something about the way DiBiase bumps, I love this because instead of from the corner, it looked like he threw him, which he did, but he landed him flat at the same time. Watch this. I just like that. I don't know why. And Ted's a tall guy and a big guy. So, and had neck issues. So maybe Scott wanted to land him a little different.
Can you go back to that again? Because
Sure.
we're going to see this with the Diamond Dallas Page one, which is sort of towards the end of the video. And there's almost a bit where, I don't know if Razor Ramon goes to his knees, and then he almost pushes them forward.
He did.
Look.
Not a,
Yeah, so he gets to his knees, and then he just pushes them forward. So it almost gives the illusion of a slam down, but it's a push forward and then a drop.
Now
yeah.
No, go on.
No, that was it. It just seems like that when I said that there's like three different versions he can give. He can give the enhancement version where he mostly folds them over. He can give the respectful version to the stars like he did with Tito Santana. And then he can give the ultra respectful version, which is this, where he goes to his knees and then just pushes them forward. So there's almost no sort of gravity is all it is.
Yeah, he's got his knees down fully. Ted is still on his upper neck. So he basically sliding him off the back of his neck and head. This is a great catch. Now, Page, I think the thing with Page, and we'll get to that, is you have to really resist Scott and be as tight as possible with your arms. Scott had him more towards the elbows than the armpit. You got to have right in the armpit, and he's gripping, if you look right here, he's gripping the armpit, the shoulder, and the top of the bicep. If you look at here, zoomed in. We'll have better footage too. But yeah, you're right. This totally took care of Ted here. Not too bad, and got a great pop from the fans.
That was Ted's final singles match in the WWF, I believe, SummerSlam 93. Then he'd go to Japan for a bit of a tour, and then he was done.
He wasn't in WCW after that?
He didn't wrestle.
Oh, okay. He had the neck injury all along, right? So that's probably why he took care of him too.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why he also took a razor's edge and took a clean loss, because basically he was putting Scott over on the way out.
This is the strength factor of Scott. That's dead weight over his shoulder. That's like literally like draped over his shoulder. Watch this. That's there. You can see right there. Cupped right here, cupped right there. I think with Page, he had him more towards the elbows, and that's not a great thing. But man, to talk about the strength, that was pretty high, but I think the guy also wanted to take that kind of bump. That was probably one of the best Razor Edge bumps that I saw. Here's the one of Rick Martel. Can we just appreciate, there's the light bulbs, the flashes going off. Can we just take a second to appreciate like how awesome and underrated Rick Martel was, especially as the model? He was such a boring, hey, that was my tag partner. What are you, smartass? You know, Tony Garea coming for a cameo. Somebody's going to ask me to do a full cameo as Tony Garea. I guarantee it sooner or later. But here's the one you're talking about. All right, look, tight, literally pinching the tricep, the bicep, and the armpit there.
And Rick is not helping. He's wriggling all over the place as well. If you play it in real time, just look how much motion.
He's trying to struggle, but he's really struggling. And Scott's like, I get what you're saying. You're supposed to feign struggling, but when your legs are dangling and you're struggling right here, that's not, it doesn't look like much, but Scott's like, oh God, I gotta get him off me. So that was probably one of the, now Rick had retired after he had some great matches with Booker T and WCW.
Yeah.
Did this Razor's Edge, and did he have a neck injury and this didn't help? I don't know the story.
What are we talking about? I'm looking at Jeff Hardy here.
No, Rick Martel.
He got injured. I think he got a leg injury.
I thought he had a neck injury at one point.
There's a neck injury at some point, but I know he tried to make a second comeback in WCW, and then he got injured in his first match back, and then he was done. But he was facing Booker T and maybe Perry Saturn in like early '98 or something like that.
I know he had a match where he wasn't injured with Booker, and it was a great match. I'm like, man, Rick can still go. I was always enjoyed his work. Bless you.
He's like an ultimate babyface that just doesn't exist anymore.
But that's why the model worked. He did such a great job because nobody ever saw that side of him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you have a perfume. You're going to be a model. Doesn't make sense.
But model.
But neither is Korea. Yeah, this one here, like when I watched it, I go, that's Jeff. This might have been not one of the best ones at all. I don't know if you saw this one. He put his elbow down, so Jeff did not want to take. See, look at that arm. You're begging for a broken arm, and this one is starting to come down too. Not a great one. Ooh, that one. Now that one I put on Scott. He landed this dude pretty high. That's not Mike Bell, but that's one of the guys that always did enhancement. I remember with the striped singlet. I forget the name. But man, oh, he landed hard on that one. Slow-mo. Yeah, definitely. That's one of the rougher ones. I remember Razor did one that ended up on the opening of Raw. Remember that? When they used to do the sirens and stuff for the opening of Raw. It might have been that one, or it was one just as rough that it ended up on. Now, this one here, is this the Jericho one? No, it's not. There's one with Jericho where Jericho, with his foot positioning, is like the best I've ever seen it. Just somebody trying to resist it, but not. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was rough. Is that Rex King or that's Rex? Is that one of the guys, Rex King and Steve Dahl? Remember, well done.
Oh yeah, well done. Yeah, awful presentation for a tag team. Always hate them as kids.
Oh, there's one on Shawn off the ladder. That's a great spot out of that.
Did you ever see? Speaking of Shawn, did you ever see the Shawn Michaels Razor's Edges on Scott?
Oh yes.
In the entranceway, yeah,
yes.
like late '93 or something.
That's where they were on their way to WrestleMania for the 2 Intercontinental belts.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a hell of a spot off the ladder. He dead weighted off the ladder and just lifted him. Took care of Shane on that one. But Shane, the thing about Shane, by the way, I didn't steal Shane's show. I just need to keep reminding people of that. Shane is he reminds me of Sabu with the body type. Shane is like built like a brick house. Like have you ever been in person with Shane?
Yeah, yeah.
Shane has very much an old wrestler, solid build to him, like almost old man strength. And Sabu, whenever I had to catch Sabu or when I wrestle Shane, it's like you're locking up with a brick wall, but not in a way where they're hurting you, but he's just so when he takes this bump, you can see it's like a thud in the ring because he's so solid. Watch. See what I mean? Like Shane's just a solid, like built wrestler. I can't quite put it into words. Now the kid took a great one. That's the perfect razor's edge. That's also safe. The bump and dropping them. See what I mean? Just like that. But you know, Sean can take like power bombs like that and other stuff that is nice, safe flat bumps. But he instantly looks like legs are spread, arms are spread, and he's dead. So in the instant, the bump knocks him out. So really great stuff. Who's this? Oh. Now he took care of the referee, but I wouldn't want to take this if I were. There he is.
The ref put his arm down again like Jeff Hardy did. Did you notice?
Yeah, but that's what they're not used to taking bumps. Like Bill Alfonso, every time he got choke slammed, he'd throw his arm. That's a natural human reaction, not a stupid wrestler one. Protect yourself. All right, who we got here?
Is that the other Fuller? Like Rick Fuller?
That was Rick Fuller, I believe.
Yeah.
That's a pretty safe one. Disco always bumped.
Worst one yet.
Disco always bumped it. You're just saying that so he comments. K100.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Bump, and then he always bumped it through he always landed high on his neck for everything. There's Page. Now see where his arms are? It looks loose because Page can't tighten his biceps and be gripped here. He's being gripped down by the elbow. That's why and he took care. They're throwing trash in the ring, so what can you do? You know what I mean? And also there's stuff going on, and he's trying to throw him in a safe spot.
What was the reason for the different grip then, do you think?
He might have lost him. It might have been sweat or oil, and he slipped down. I just think it's one of those things. He couldn't get the grip. That's all. Maybe Page was too loose, so he grabbed the joint instead of up here. Because when he picks you up, and the second he's here, that's why they call it a razor's edge. You have to literally throw your arms out and flex your muscles to resist the grip, to tighten it so he can do that. I just think Page was loose. The juice is loose, baby. All right, so here's Jericho. You notice the feet? He hooks around to try, and even on commentary said he was trying to resist. Now look at Jericho's arms. Stiff as a board. It's perfect. But when he comes down, watch him. I love that. I'm going to go back to it. That is the best razor's edge, the way to take it. Because what Jericho did was he looped his feet back here. We're going to go in slow-mo and pause. He's up, up, up. The second, now what that did for Scott too, rather than dangling, Scott can stand there all day. You notice how he's just standing there? There's no dead weight pulling down. So when Jericho hooked, he eliminated all the weight right here. So he felt probably 150 pounds lighter. Scott comes down. Watch. The very last second, Jericho's going to loop his legs to take a proper bump. You notice how I use British terms? Proper bump. You like that?
Is that a British term? Is it?
You use proper. That's the first time I ever said proper in my life.
Oh, okay.
I'm white trash.
I didn't realize that was the thing I said.
You always say it. Crack on, too.
Crack on.
As Tyrone Biggins would say, crack on, crack on. You come on, you don't know Chappelle's show? Good Lord. We got a lot of work to do. But Jericho doesn't have any work here. He took the best razor's edge from the beginning to the end. Love it. Look at that. And he still kicked his legs up and folded himself. See, he landed safe and just did a kick over like that. Great stuff.
So a lot of people, I'm sorry. I was just going to say a lot of people were accusing Scott that he would do different kind of. I mean, to a point maybe, but I don't think, apart from maybe a couple of the examples, any of them were dangerous.
I think what happens too is we're falling into a pattern. Have you noticed this? The Perry Saturn stuff, the Bagwell match, whatever else we're going to talk about. In the moment, in the heat of the moment, at the exact time, the reaction and the way your brain processes it is completely different than when you look at it years from it happening and you go, that wasn't so bad. Are we desensitized? Is hindsight 2020? Is the initial reaction more genuine and warranted than the reaction now or the lack of the reaction? It's pretty fascinating because that's what I find myself doing. I really thought that was bad when I first watched it, and now I can see there's still two different types, but he's definitely not planting people as bad as I guess people would have guessed. It's not like the Yokozuna one. The gap's not as big as that.
If there is, I know a lot of people writing in saying you should look at this, and now we have. I'm wondering if there is a Razor's Edge out there that's happened that we didn't see in that compilation that's somehow given Razor Ramon Scott Hall a bad name or the move a bad name. So if there's one that we missed that you're specifically thinking of, write in the comments, let us know, and we'll watch it in a future episode.
I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you right now that Scott, very political, smart worker, in and outside the ring. This is where there's a difference between Scott Hall and the Beverly Brothers. Scott Hall, my guess would be the first one or two killed the enhancement talent. Just killed them. That might be the one that got his reputation. But then somebody might have said to Scott, it might have been Sean. Might have been anybody that said, hey, man, if you're going to do it to the main roster guys, you have to adjust that a bit. You see what I mean? Whereas with the Beverly Brothers, they never adjusted anything, even on their own self-awareness. And that's why they never did that finish to anybody but enhancement talents. As you saw right here, they became enhancement talents for Razor Ramon. That's what I think that the adjustment, the compromise, is what Scott got and what the Beverly Brothers did not get.
I think it's also worth mentioning with the Beverly Brothers, either Wayne Bloom or Mike Enos, one of them left and left the other one high and dry for like 3 months or 6 months in the WWF. And therefore, the guy that was remaining just became, for all intents and purposes, a jobber, which often happens with a tag team where one of them leaves and then what else is there to do for the other guy, I guess, in that sense.
Well, that's the Jim Ross thing, too. Hey, for good or bad, if your team's done, you're in the desert for a while. He said that during the Mike Rotunda clip. By the way, my wife made sure we got in the, I told him we got it in. She loves it. 5.
That's 5.
That was for
there you
my
go,
wife.
Over under. That was over under, that was. So if
that
you
was
had
for my beautiful wife. She loves it.
Good man. I guess that's the end of the show, actually. I know people are used to these 3-hour shows. I'm getting a bit more used to writing formats for more like a 2-hour show. Excuse me as I wheeze into the camera there.
But we do have a special botch reaction coming up after this. So it will be 3 hours for us.
It's already been 3 hours for us, let me tell you. So we've done the Patreon thing. Once again, I encourage everyone to go to the Patreon. Stevie will tell you how to get to the Patreon as well, where we go through the Will Ospreay and Ricochet, their version of the International, the first 40 seconds, and how they just seem to do every single match exactly the same, and why it's not good. That's 20-minute video on that we couldn't really do for the YouTube channel. And also, away from this full episode, we're also going to be doing Indie Botches too. That will be out on YouTube somewhere in the next week, I guess, as well, that we're going to post that. So instead of me doing the outro, because you do the outros now, and thank the Patreon supporters at the same time. Stevie, how can people get even more of the Stevie Richards show through Patreon?
Oh, it's so easy now that James puts up the logo at the end of every clip and episode, which thank you very much. Patreon.com/Stevie Richards. As James said, pre and post show, special reaction videos, breakdowns, analysis. As a matter of fact, in the queue right now is your favorite one. T. Joe Khan.
T. Joe Khan.
T. Joe Khan. I actually have that going out on Christmas Eve, so it's going to be an early Christmas present. Tijo Khan, instead of coming down the chimney, is going to jump out of the water, jump out of the lake if you live near a lake. Also, the Mike Bell's Perry Saturn full match reaction and other stuff, other unique things. I may start gaming on the patreon.com/Stevie Richards channel. Start doing some live stuff. I've been answering comments. So please, if you're there, even here on YouTube, comment, interact. We look at all that stuff and we try to answer them either on the show or replying to those comments. So that's about it. Patreon.com/Stevie Richards. Stevie Richards Fitness, and even more importantly, James has 2 books, one on The Rock, one on Owen Hart. Will there be a third? There's your cliffhanger. Thank you for watching. Oh, why are you shaking your head? It's supposed to be a cliffhanger. Thank you for watching the Stevie Richards Show. For James, Chris, and myself, aha. See you next week.